Hey everybody, Ed Homewood, Old Guy Hi-Fi channel. Hope everyone's doing well today. Today we're going to take a look at this really interesting piece from Duke Audio Nobsound. It's called the AV-525, and it is a tube solid-state hybrid integrated amplifier. So sit back, relax, and we're going to look at some glowing glass.
At Old Guy Hi-Fi, he's an audio king. Every frequency dances as he starts to sing. Old Guy Hi-Fi, where the classics revive. In the corner of cyberspace, he brings them to life.
The AV-525 is an interesting hybrid tube solid-state integrated amplifier. It sells for $500. It is rated at 100 by 2 into 4 ohms or 70 by 2 into 8 ohms. It has a frequency response of 20 to 20,000 hertz and a THD rating of 0.1%, so not bad. It has some really nice features. It goes into and goes out. As we're going to look at the back of it. It does have Bluetooth built in. It does have USB on the front, so you can plug in a jump drive or I think a hard drive with FLAC files or WMA or MP3 files on it, and it's got a DAC built in. Nice display. VU meters. One thing I noticed on the VU meters though is you really got to be jamming on it to get them to move. There's got to be either real strong bass or you got to be playing it pretty loud. But nice thing, separate bass and treble, and obviously volume control, and everything is remote controllable, your source selector, volume, so forth and so on from here. The interesting thing though is the tube front end on this. So it uses a combination of EL84s, 6K4s, and 5726 tubes on the preamp side, and then for rectification it uses a WY2P tube, and then on the output stage the transistors are Toshiba 5200s and 1943. So good stout transistor solid state output, but a real nice buffered tube front end, so you get some of that tube warmth with it. So let's do this. Let's take a look at the back real quick, and then we'll talk about how it sounds. Well, here we are looking at the back end of the Duke AV-525. We've got Bluetooth antenna, we've got an optical Toslink in, we've got a coax SPDIF in, and that feeds that DAC, which is a 16-bit 48 kilohertz. Subwoofer out, but no bass management, no crossover frequencies or anything, just a full range output. A line input labeled CD, a line input labeled DVD, our two speaker connectors. There is a fan, and the fan can be audible. AC power socket and AC voltage selector. So that's looking, oh, by the way, two big toroidal power transformers here to power the amplifier. So that's looking at the back panel of the Duke Audio Nobsound AV-525. Well, at this point, you'd expect me to have this thing upside down and digging around inside its guts on the workbench, but I'm not going to do that in this particular case for one big reason. As I looked at and started to disassemble this tube cage protection assembly sort of thing, it is super fiddly. I wanted to get the tubes out. I don't want to flip it over and open it up with the tube still in it. So I was looking to disassemble this, and it looked like some of the screws that went all the way down in the chassis were holding the tube sockets up in their place, and I didn't want to have things fall down inside, so I thought it best just to leave it alone. It's not my unit, so I didn't want to mess it up. So how did I test it? Well, I did feed the internal DAC. It's only rated at 16 bits, 48 kilohertz, but I fed it with a Weem Mini, and it's suitable for that. It's a better DAC than what's in the Weem Mini, so that was a nice combination. I did feed it line level in from a Gishelli J2S, and I was streaming from out of Arna. And I hooked it up to a lot of the speakers I have here, the big Wharfdale Diamonds, the ELAC DBR62s, a pair of Dolly Opticon 2 Mark IIs, which you'll see the review soon if you haven't seen it already, and the Neil Blanchard MLTL6 stand mount transmission line speakers. And it performed well from the standpoint of this thing's got power. It is strong. It is dynamic, but the issue is it is very V-shaped frequency response. So recessed mid-range, accentuated bass, accentuated top end. And you know what? For rock and roll and for a lot of kind of pop music, things like that, it worked quite well. But I listened to a little bit different stuff. And some of the stuff I listened to sounded okay on it. This album from Banco de Gaia called Trauma from this year, 2024. Banco de Gaia is actually a DJ, a British musician named Toby Marks, and he kind of emerged out of the 80s British acid house music movement, and kind of into electronica, and is kind of ambient dub rhythm sort of electronica. Now he's interesting, and he combines kind of musical elements from the Middle East and India and Arabia, and just kind of all around the world. And there's some great samples of some really interesting instruments and sounds that he uses. And he creates this kind of sweeping sort of, not really cinematic, but kind of an interesting ambient, but definitely got good bass in it. Just really, it's the kind of stuff I love, and it's so hard to describe because in this music category, there are 1,000 different genres and subgenres and sub-subgenres that it's just crazy. It's ambient electronica with a good bass line. I'll leave it at that. And this did all right with it, especially on the bass lines. I thought that some of the instruments in the mid-range were pulled back a bit from, back from the rest of the other instruments. And some of the high frequency stuff was a little bit exciting on the top end, but overall not bad. The problem was when I got to this album called Sun Signature. Now this is a collaboration between Elizabeth Fraser and Damon Reese of Massive Attack. Elizabeth Fraser, you may remember, was vocalist for Cocteau Twins. And when she was with the Cocteau Twins, the British press said that she had the voice of God. Her voice is remarkable. She's my age, 66 years old, and it still is just remarkable. Her ability to hold notes at just this lush, very, very wonderful kind of ethereal, pop ambient sort of music. It's just amazing. It's there's a lot of unique elements in it. There's kind of a trip hop sense to it. There's a kind of cinematic soundscape, sweeping sort of things, a lushness to it. This kind of sense of a bit of like chamber music or like ambient chamber music, or maybe like spacious chamber music, excuse me. It's a wonderful album. Her voice is amazing, but it was pulled back from the mix on this particular amplifier. It didn't have quite the texture that I was hoping for, and I've heard on other systems like my reference system, but not bad, not great, fair. I'll leave it at that. Again, bass was good, and this does a good job of that because it's got good power. Now, a little bit more my style, and although that Sun Signature is amazing, Dexter Gordon, this album, Other Side of Round Midnight. This is from 1984. It is actually, I believe, his last album. He passed away in 1990 he'd had larynx cancer and kidney failure. And unfortunately, you'll see him on the album cover smoking a cigarette, and it looks like you can see where he had the surgery on his throat. I used to smoke too, so I get it. Anyway, what a wonderful album. Great textures. His sax sound, his tone, his acumen with it is wonderful. It's a beautiful album. There's some wonderful music on it. There's a great vocal from Bobby McFerrin on a song called What Is This Thing Called Love? Very, very good. But again, the vocals were kind of pulled back in the mix a bit. The saxophone down in the lower registers was very forward. Drums and cymbals were very forward, but again, that mid-range area was kind of just pulled back a bit. Not terrible, but just pulled back a bit. So imaging, there wasn't a ton there. It filled out the area between the speakers. There wasn't a lot of height. There wasn't a lot of depth to it, although vocals sounded behind the front baffle of the speakers, where the bass and treble sounded right at the front baffle of the speakers. But again, with rock and roll and things like that, it was very good. Anything that has a good bass lines through it, or a prominent bass line through it, this could do really well because the amplifier is quite powerful. So that's kind of where it fits in the mix of things. I think it's a well-built unit. I think at $500, it's okay. If you're interested in tube rolling, and I didn't, I bet you could change the sound of this quite dramatically by using better tubes. That's not something I'm going to have the opportunity to do, but my guess is you put some good EL84s in there, and it uses EL84s, 6K4s, 5726s, and then of course a Y2P2, a WY2P rectifier. If you change those tubes out, I bet you could get some really interesting sound out of this. So anyway, that is the Duke Nobsound AV-525. Well, hopefully you enjoyed the video, and hopefully you'd be willing to give me a like and your subscription. And if you wish to support the channel, there's a thank you button on the video window, but only if you're watching on a computer. If you're watching on a TV, it doesn't show up there because none of the menu stuff does. Anyway, there is a membership link in the pinned comment and in the video description if you so desire. There will be a link to the Duke Audio website if you're interested in this. I don't have an affiliation with them, but if you're interested, it's there. You never know. This may go on sale for Black Friday or something like that. I have no advanced knowledge of any of that, however. In the video description are other affiliate links from Amazon and things, and you know the drill on those. They're my playlists down there, and again, I apologize, they're still a work in progress, and I'll be adding to those and kind of revamping them. And I do add things to the test track volumes 1 and 2 on an ongoing basis, so check back on those. There's some great playlists in the community post. Please comment, please let me know. Is tube something you're interested in getting involved in? Are you, is a tube hybrid have an appeal to you? You're looking at just all tubes, or just maybe all solid state? Let me know your thoughts. I appreciate that. I love when we can communicate back and forth like that. But let's be kind and keep things no political stuff, please. Anyway, please like, subscribe, and if you wish, follow me on Instagram, comment. I think I've covered everything I need to cover for the Duke Nobsound AV-525. My name is Ed Homewood. This is the Old Guy Hi-Fi channel. And now it's your turn to sit back and listen to some wonderful music, maybe on something with tubes or maybe something with solid state, but something you really love and you'll enjoy and you'll relax. Thanks so much for your time. Have a wonderful day.